According to First Enoch 16, the angelic transmission of heavenly knowledge to earthly humans can also be understood as a contamination of distinct categories within God's orderly creation. As inhabitants of heaven, the watchers were privy to all the secrets of heaven. Their revelation of this knowledge to the inhabitants of the earth was categorically improper as well as morally destructive. I don't want to leave this section without saying this. The real crime is that they want to raise up their own nations. They want their own populations. They want to imitate God without his permission. It's kind of a Gnostic flavor to that, if you know a little bit about Gnosticism. So this is what's going to become the real issue here. They were all of them 200, and they descended in the days of Jared onto the peak of Mount Hermon. Okay, Hermon is the key location. And they called the mountain Hermon because they swore and bound one another with a curse on it. Okay, this Hermon in Hebrew is related to, it's a better way to say it, same root as charem. Again, the devote to destruction, to put under the ban, that sort of thing. So there's an association there between the terms. These and all the others with them took for themselves wives, and among them such as they chose, they began to go into them and defile themselves through them. Again, they defiled themselves. This is a transgression of heaven and earth. To teach them sorcery and charms, and to reveal to them the cutting of roots and plants, and they conceived from them and bore to them great giants. Asael, another character, taught men to make swords of iron and weapons and shields and breastplates and every instrument of war. He showed the metals of the earth, how they should work gold to fashion it suitably, and concerning silver to fashion it for bracelets and ornaments for women. He showed them concerning antimony and eye paint and all manner of precious stones and dyes. Now you're probably thinking of the passage in 1 Peter already about the cosmetic, issue. And there was much godlessness upon the earth, and they made their ways desolate. Shemchaza taught spells and the cutting of roots. And then you get a list of which watcher taught what to people. You get this whole list. You get signs of shooting stars, signs of the earth, signs of the sun, signs of the moon. Again, astrological stuff. They all began to reveal mysteries to their wives and to their children. As men were perishing, the cry went up to heaven. So in Enoch, even in this section and elsewhere in the book, the problem with all this isn't that we know how to make something that's made of iron, or we use eye paint to make ourselves beautiful. The problem is what people did with it. It corrupted them. So it takes the problem of lust and makes it worse. It takes the problem of just any technology and makes it worse. People began to use things for self-destruction, for destruction of their fellow man, that sort of thing. So this is what the passage is going through. In a nutshell, what First Enoch is saying here is, look, we know we had this thing, the fall, and we know people are sinners. But they consistently blame the watchers for teaching people how to be even better sinners. Okay, in other words, giving them more tools to destroy themselves. And this isn't much of a conceptual leap anyway for us, because any technology that we have can be used for the same thing. Okay, I can commit horrendous crimes with a phone. I can blow things up with a phone. I mean, you can just use something that ordinarily it's just simple. It's technology. I mean, I can commit a crime with a fork. I can stab someone. Anything that we have can be used to an evil end. And that's really what Enoch is going to be angling for here. And they blame part of it on people, the fall, because of just who we are, our internal sinful impulse, the lack of, we don't have God's nature, God's character. We make choices to do evil. So people are going to get plenty of blame. But then people being taught how to express their own impulses, their own wickedness in various ways. That's a big deal in Second Temple Judaism. First Enoch 9, you have 4 angels, archangels Michael, Sariel, Raphael, and Gabriel, see the terrible events unfolding on earth. They approach God for a solution. Basically, you got to do something about this. Look at what's going on. You have to do something about this. The 4 archangels say to God in 1 Enoch 9:11, you know all things before they happen. You see these things and you permit them. and you do not tell us what we ought to do with them with regard to these things. I mean, we're here to help. What should we do? God responds in 1 Enoch 10 with the news that should sound familiar to biblical readers. This is when you get the flood. When the Most High said, the great Holy One spoke, he sent Sariel to the son of Lamech, which was Noah, saying, go to Noah and say to him in my name, hide yourself, reveal to him that the end is coming, the whole world will perish, tell him that a deluge is about to come, so on and so forth. So in the Bible, in the Old Testament, Genesis 6, 1 through 4 precedes the flood, okay? It's just that in Genesis 6, 1 to 4, those 4 verses to us, key thought here, to us, lack context. We read them and it's like, well, what does that have to do with the flood? Why are these 4 verses even here? I mean, you get to verse 5 and okay, everything that man does is wicked. We get that. And then Noah starts to have this conversation with God, and then we have the flood narrative. Well, what do the 4 verses have to do with this? We lack the context. An Israelite, again, a literate Israelite, would not have lacked the context. That's the disconnect. A literate Israelite would know, oh, these 4 verses sort of compress this story that, is really a response to Mesopotamia, because Mesopotamia has the same story. And the writer just sort of took it for granted, that people are going to know what I'm talking about. I don't need to just rehash all this stuff. And this is a precursor to the flood. People living in the Second Temple period had the context as well. We just don't, because we don't read that stuff. We don't read the literature of the great wider world to know these 4 verses in Genesis 6 are responding to something. This stuff in 1 Enoch is recovering or preserving or transmitting the larger story that Genesis 6, 1 through 4 was a response to. Okay, we lack all of that. And unfortunately, again, because of the history of the Christian church, we not only lack it, it's been kept from you. You have been cut off from it. Again, it's not like, oh, the gospel's really in Enoch, we're missing. No, that isn't the point at all. The point is that if you had read this, there are, again, things you would read in your Bible that would, okay, the lights go on. I kind of get what they're talking about here because I've read this other thing that they were familiar with. So we have an immediate disconnect. Even with the flood story, we just get these 4 verses. So again, just to summarize here, we have the flood story, the judgment here in the second half. Until the day of their judgment, consummation. Again, the watchers are imprisoned until the eternal judgment is consummated. They're sent to the abyss, to the prison. Again, that's language you get in the New Testament, where they will be confined forever. And at the time of judgment, it's not really forever. It's until the time of the judgment. Well, when's the time of the judgment in biblical theology? It's at the end of days. What's the end of days? It's the day of the Lord. It's the return of the Messiah. All this kind of stuff. Okay, so there is a finite endpoint to this, but that's where they are. So this is a summary from, I believe, Reed's book. Yep. The birth of the giants is explored in terms of the mingling of spirits and flesh. Angels properly dwell in heaven, humans properly dwell on earth. But the nature of the giants is mixed. This transgression of categories brings terrible results. After their physical death, the giants' demonic spirits come forth from their bodies to plague humankind. The citations there are from 1 Enoch. According to 1 Enoch 16, the angelic transmission of heavenly knowledge to earthly humans can also be understood as a contamination of distinct categories within God's orderly creation. As inhabitants of heaven, the watchers were privy to all the secrets of heaven. Their revelation of this knowledge to the inhabitants of the earth was categorically improper as well as morally destructive.